Welcome to another one of my October videos, the October series, where I talk about my experiences with the supernatural and things. And already I've talked about fairies, but today, maybe you've all been waiting for this, I don't know, I'm going to talk about ghosts. So the really spooky things. And it's a good time of year to do that. I've got my tea. Hopefully you've got your tea, because I'm a tea person. Are you a tea person? Maybe you like coffee, I don't know. But it's nice to have a cup of tea, and let's just chat. Let's have a little talk about ghosts and ghouls and things like that. And as you can tell, I am pretty nonchalant in some ways about these things. I know there's a lot of people out there, my husband included actually, my husband's name is Oliver, who do not want to talk about ghosts whatsoever. And maybe it's his Catholic background, something like that, but it's okay. If you're one of these people, you don't like to talk about ghosts, you're a little bit worried about what's going to happen to you if you do, then back away now. Or just keep in mind that we are going to talk about some pretty freaky things that have happened to me. So, with that being said, that little disclaimer there, welcome. I might as well be, calling these October things like talks with Zoe and plants and tea, because it seems like I'm just sitting in plants and drinking tea and blabbering about stuff. Hopefully you've been enjoying it. Yeah. It's certainly fun for me, actually. It's nice. I like to talk, if you couldn't tell. So, man, oh man, oh man. What am I going to say? I've got things. Hold on. Right, let's do three. I'm looking at, I've got like, one day I might write a book, by the way. I've got this little list of experiences that I've had that I can remember. I went and made this list for October, and oh my goodness, I mean, there's so many things that I wish that I could talk about, some things that would be interesting to talk about, a little bit different, and not all of them are covered in, when I was talking about fairies, I just felt like I wanted to say so much more about other things, like aliens and unicorns, and there is so much to be said. I've got here, I'm going to talk about that today, Joan of Arc. Exciting. Out-of-body experiences, weird synchronicities between me and other people, like being on the same wavelength, attunements, soul retrievals, detoxing your chakras, light language, what is that called where I'm forgetting now, it's going to come to me in a moment, but where you write and it's inspired by something, I'm forgetting. Manifesting things, healing myself, healing other people, meeting the Queen of the Elves. I didn't even include that one in my fairy one because that is a very precious personal memory to me. So as you can tell, I have a lot to say, and I don't think I can say it all in videos. I think one day I'm gonna have to write a book or something, because I really do want to share these things, and other people have said they're very excited about it. So maybe it will happen. But today I'm going to share 3 different stories. So, and these are all to do with ghostly presences. One of them is a bit of a longer story. I hope you're in for the journey. Get yourself a cup of tea. Let's do it. Right. Oh, so good. So good. It's rosehip tea. Okay, so let's do this chronologically because I like time and why not. So we'll start with the oldest one, and this is one that I remember from childhood. These are some of the most punctual stories, like the ones that really stuck out in my mind, you know? So this one from childhood was probably, I don't know, one of the scariest, very shaking, weird, thrilling things that I experienced. It was quite vivid, and I was probably about 10 or so. Now I'm gonna have to give you a little background here, because when I was younger, I was pretty afraid. And it's funny, I've thought about this now in hindsight, but my fear was at night, and it would manifest in this way where I just didn't want to be able to see anything. I thought that was normal at the time, but it was like this intense fear of seeing something at night. And so what I would do is I would pull the bed covers over my head, and I would hide in there like this. So my eyes are covered, and I just have this little breathing hole where I could breathe through the bed covers. But in case I woke up in the middle of the night, I wouldn't be able to see anything because my eyes were covered. And thinking about that now, that says a heck of a lot about what I was able to do. And like, I knew that I could see things during the day. I don't know. I was afraid. I was just afraid of seeing things. So I'm lying there one night, and I wake up, or perhaps I was falling asleep and it was in between states, but I wake up and I get this like feeling that something's weird, and I'm awake for a while, and slowly, gradually, I realize that I can see through the bed covers. Now, this is where you're going to have to believe me, because I know that sounds really, really, really crazy, but where it had been completely dark before, I could now see into my room through the bed covers, and I could see the light in the windows, and I remember, you know, the moonlight coming in and falling on the floor, and the way that my bedside table looked, and just the whole room, you know, like that section, the corner. And as that was happening, I became aware that in that space there was a figure right by the bed, and it was looking at me. I'm getting goosebumps right now. So I'm seeing through the bed covers, and I see this figure, and it was so freaky because it was dark. The shape of it was dark. And I think that's what really made me afraid. Not the figure itself, but the fact that it was so dark. Looking back on it now, I'm fairly sure that this figure was less of a ghost and perhaps more of a guardian spirit, because I remember seeing the shape of wings on its back. But at the time, of course, I was paralyzed with fear, and I closed my eyes. I did not want to see that at all. And I probably spent the rest of the night just trying not to think about it. I used to get, you know, crazy dreams and things, so, you know, whatever. But, so there's that. There was that one. And at this point in time, I am pretty much 90% sure that I was not dreaming, but that I was awake at that point. Because here's why. In dreams, like, it doesn't matter. If I was dreaming, it's still interesting. But I'm fairly sure I was awake because in the dreams where I dream of being in a place that I find familiar, when I wake up, I realize that the details of that place were very, very different than, the reality of it. I always have dreams at my grandparents' house, but it's some weird hyper-dimensional space that is totally not their house, Upon waking, it's like, no, that wasn't at all like their house. But in this experience, my room was exactly like my room. I've had a recent experience, actually, very recently, that was very similar, where I dreamt that something was trying to get into our room. Our room was exactly the same as what I see in reality. So these things, I don't know. That's why I think that perhaps it was real. Now, the second one is going to be the longest story. Or shall we save that for last? Let's save that for last, because I don't know if you're going to stick with me here. So, second experience. And this one is in France, and it involves a church, and it involves Joan of Arc. Very cool, right? I love her. Amazing, amazing figure. Heroine, So, I'm going to be quick about this, because I think my camera's going to die. So, I was visiting, at the time, a small town in France called Reims. I hope that I'm getting this right. I had a lot of difficulty saying it even then. But if you want to spell it, it's Reims, I think, Reims. So I was visiting this area to study the Gothic cathedrals. And of course, there's the main cathedral there, the Cathedral of Reims, that is very special. It's been called the birthplace of Gothic, or the height, the pinnacle of Gothic architecture in the Middle Ages. Oh my God, I love it. Amazing. And so I was visiting that one cathedral and taking some photos, doing some drawings and things, when I happened across this one area. I had read a lot about the cathedral in the past, quite a while ago, and so it wasn't in the forefront of my mind, but I was walking through, and there was this one area where it really hit me. It felt like there was something there, like a presence there, and I was quite lucky on this morning. There was hardly anyone in the cathedral with me. So I knew that this presence was otherworldly, and I just felt so strongly that somebody was there, and it was a young figure, and it was interesting. I felt like it was somebody I knew, which was very odd. And as I was walking, I came to this one chapel. In that chapel, there's a statue of what looks like a young boy. At the time, I was like, oh, it's a knight, a young boy. And I was like, that's the figure, that's the one that's here. Who is it? And without looking at, any information, it clicked in my mind. It was like, wait, that's no boy, that's Joan of Arc, that's her, and she's here right now. And I have no proof of this, nothing to, conclude the story, but the overwhelming feeling of her presence was so special, especially because at that time I was not feeling like a very spiritual person, and my rational mind was very much, at the forefront, and my spiritual beliefs were very, very pushed back. So that feeling of the presence, it was quite strong, I must say. So I felt so overwhelmed, I ended up kneeling and praying in this chapel, and I ended up going there every day that I was staying in that city. It was so special, so incredible. The backstory behind that is that Joan of Arc actually, if I can get this right, she led the king at the time into defending the country against the English, who were trying to invade and do all these kinds of things. And she also wrote him many letters asking for him to become anointed, I think, by God. I hope I'm getting this right. And she was there at that one cathedral for his coronation, and when he became anointed in the church, that was where she was and he was when it happened. So that one church is an incredibly special place for people who are interested in Joan of Arc. Kind of cool, right? My last story is the longest story. I'm really hoping my camera will survive through the whole thing. It requires a bit of explanation. So, it begins in a kirkyard, which is another word for a churchyard or a graveyard, in Scotland. And some of you may have heard of this. If you're interested in ghosts, you may have heard of this place. It's quite well known for the Mackenzie Poltergeist, this one churchyard. It's called Greyfriars Kirkyard, if you're interested, and it's in Edinburgh. And I was studying at Edinburgh at the time. I was very much interested in this place. I'm a lover of graveyards in the first place. I'm already wandering through graveyards all the time. Just, I don't know what it is. I love them. And then I decided one day that I wanted to take a ghost tour of this graveyard. And well, actually, it was a ghost tour of, I think it was of the whole city of Edinburgh, if I'm not mistaken. And I took this one with a friend. I've taken it twice. Both times very interesting. So I had already known about the Mackenzie Poltergeist. I'm going to need to explain a little bit about the Mackenzie Poltergeist. That's why it says a longer story. There's a bit of background. So the Mackenzie Poltergeist has been around for a long time, and has moved places within the kirkyard. Like the activity as the poltergeist has moved around, sometimes in houses near the graveyard, sometimes in the graveyard. At the moment, the activity has mainly been inside this one cut-off area, which, gosh, I don't know if I remember the name. It was actually used as one of the first concentration camps back when the Scottish peoples were asking for independence from England. These people were petitioning against England at the time, and England retaliated and took these people and incarcerated them within their own graveyard. So it's a very sad tale. There's a lot of, feeling of loss and sadness when you go there. But funnily enough, my story didn't happen inside that area where the poltergeist is said to remain. My story happened outside that area. Also, it's worth mentioning, the poltergeist is known specifically for scratching people, biting people, leaving marks on people. So very physical, to do with the body, and also overcoming people with cold energy and having them faint. Not so much known for being seen. In fact, the the poltergeist, I don't know, I think it's been seen only on a few occasions. So, or at least up until my story. So, that background being said, the Mackenzie poltergeist is there. I kind of know about it. And I'm expecting maybe somebody's going to faint. You know, I'm at this tour. The tour guide is prancing around in the graveyard. It's nighttime. It's dark already. Or dusk, twilight-ish. And I'm with my friend and just listening. It's kind of fun, you know, to be there. When all of a sudden I'm aware, very suddenly aware that there's this person standing right beside me, about here, if you can see that, very close, very tall, and they're looking straight at me. And now this is one of those things where, you know, if you've ever been aware, it's like that perception on the edge of your eyes, your senses, is like, you just know, you know, there's a person there, it's on the edge of my sight, I see them, I know they're there, and I am really weirded out because they're looking at me as opposed to looking at the tour guide. And I'm just like, what the heck is this person wanting? As I turn my head, what seemed like a person is actually some kind of a figure, and it was so clear for just a moment. It was the head and the shoulders of this figure who's leaning over me, and it was dark, like a shadow kind of, and it dissolved into blue, like a blue, you know when a camera flashes and there's that flash of light in your eye? It was like that, and then nothing, and it was gone. And my heart jolted. I was like, oh, what the heck? What did I just see? And part of my brain instantly said, like, you're making this up. Okay, it's fine. Calm down. You know, calm yourself down. Told my friend straight away, and I kind of went closer, and I was like, I just saw something. Explained it. He laughed at me. It was fine. Everything worked out. And the tour went on. Nothing happened to anyone. I thought that was the end of it. Until a little bit later, I took another tour with this same group, with a new friend who was visiting from New Zealand. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's go on this tour. I drag her along. Nothing really happens during that tour, luckily, except I mention what happened on the last tour. I mentioned to this new tour guide what happened, and he's intrigued. He wants me to come write it in the book that they have where people write their experiences, you know, for like proof and things, so that the tours can continue, of course. And I go afterwards to look at this book, and you know, I'm looking through all the different things, and I notice that about a month before that day, at about the time that I took my last tour, things start to change. People's experiences at around the same time that, you know, I had last seen this thing, changed from an experience of biting, scratching, all of these physical things, into suddenly explaining that they had seen a tall, dark figure of about 6 foot high looking at them. And oh my God, was I freaked out. My stomach like turned over, and I thought, holy crap, this is the thing, you know, that I saw. And all of a sudden, people are seeing the same thing that I saw, this tall figure, shadow, like, and seeing it in the graveyard. I don't know actually what happened after this, because I, explained this to the tour guide. I was like, wow, this is crazy, and got a little bit freaked out, went home, nothing ever happened. It was fine, but I certainly never went to that graveyard again at night. I can tell you that. But I don't know. Perhaps you might be able to tell me if you've ever been there. Have you seen this thing? And whether it continued or not. Certainly for me, it was an incredibly weird experience. It really felt like, the first time it felt like I had this self-doubt. I was like able to unexplain that thing. I was able to say, it's not real, it's okay, you were just seeing something. And when the second thing happened, it really felt like, no, I actually did see that thing, and so did other people. So, kind of interesting, kind of fun. I hope that you've enjoyed this. It's more for entertainment purposes, talking about ghosts. For me, I don't understand these things very much. I have no explanation. I don't know about, what happens or why these things would exist. But I am certainly interested, intrigued, and I continue to go to graveyards. I always will. I'd be interested though. Do you have any ghost stories? If you do, and you're wanting to tell me, definitely leave a comment below. I am open to hearing about different things like that, and I hope that you can open yourself about talking about these things. I do want to say one last thing, which was that, hopefully I've got time for this. I think this is still true. I used to believe when I was younger that I create my reality. I still believe this. And therefore, if I was to start looking more for ghosts or believing in them, I would start to experience them a lot more. And just because of the nature of ghosts and I've had some pretty freaky seance experiences, I did not want to look further into it, and I chose somewhat to close that avenue off. Not to say that it actually stopped things from happening all the time, it just meant that I wasn't going looking for it. Because to me, that realm, unless I knew a little bit more about it, I don't think that I would be capable of dealing with everything that could come from that place. So I would say, if you are not wanting to, see these things, if you are a little bit afraid, definitely you can choose your reality. You can choose to say no. And you have that ability. So I hope you have fun. Thank you so much for watching, guys. As usual, go in peace. If you want, we can do a little breath meditation here. So just calm yourself. And let's take 3 deep breaths just to end it. Noticing each breath. I love you all very much. Have a wonderful afternoon, or day, or evening.